So, why do people use arguments for? One use is to change people's minds about a particular issue. This is what is called persuasion. So, one of the uses of arguments is persuasion, that is, to persuade someone of the truth of the argument's conclusion. So, if the argument is good, and if people are rational and unprejudiced, and you have expressed your argument clearly, then if all goes well, your audience will be convinced of the conclusion. Now, is every attempt at persuasion an argument? Definitely not. Politics and advertising, for example, appeal to forms of persuasion that are quite different from arguments. So if you look at this ad, so here you're not giving any explicit reasons from which it logically follows that you ought to purchase a particular laundry detergent. Rather, there is an attempt at establishing some emotionally charged association between the product being advertised and something desirable, like safety, peace of mind, etc. So there are many forms of persuasion that are not rational and are not arguments. Likewise, the fact that an argument is persuasive for a particular audience doesn't mean that it is good. That is, it does not necessarily give good reasons for believing its conclusion. For example, an anti-Semite might argue that you shouldn't accept Einstein's theories because he was Jewish. Now, this is a terrible argument, but it can be persuasive for some people, provided that they have the right prejudices. We could also use an argument as a way of giving good reasons for accepting a claim. This is what is called justification. An argument can be used for showing that a given claim is justified. Well, we saw that not all attempts at persuasion are arguments. Now let's form the inverse question. Are all arguments concerned with persuading people? Well, no. Suppose that you already accept the truth of the Pythagorean theorem. Now, it may be that somebody gives you a demonstration of the theorem. They give you a proof. So the point of this exercise perhaps is not in changing your mind about the truth of the theorem because you already accepted it. Rather, what you have gained is that now you understand the reasons, right, why the theorem is true. So somebody can use an argument without being concerned with persuading people of the truth of the conclusion. Another example. Suppose that you are defending one of your views in front of a very hostile audience, say a tribunal, and that there is no way that they will change their minds and come to see things your way. Well, perhaps you can proceed to argue for your views or actions just because you want to exercise your right to be heard and to be treated like a rational being. Another use of arguments is as a way of answering a why question. In this capacity, they would be explanations. In an explanation, we can give reasons for why something happened. Now, although both justification and explanation involve given reasons, they're not the same. So the difference depends on the particular context. So Al went to visit his grandmother, therefore he won't be able to come. Well, this could be an explanation or a justification, again, depending on the background. So suppose that you want your audience to be rationally convinced that Al won't be able to come to the party. Well, suppose you could offer as premise that he went to visit his grandmother, right, and who lives very far. And perhaps this is something that your audience will readily accept. In this case, you're trying to persuade your audience of the truth of the conclusion, and at the same time providing grounds for why it is reasonable to believe it. Now consider another situation. Suppose that everyone is somehow convinced that Al won't come to the party, so that isn't under dispute. What happens is that people don't know why he won't come. This calls for an explanation. Here, the conclusion expresses what needs to be explained, and the premises express the explanation. So you introduce a statement, namely that Al went to visit his grandmother, that, if you're lucky, explains the conclusion. That is, that he isn't able to come. So you can see that, for instance, in explanations, what is the conclusion generally isn't under dispute, whereas in arguments, it's more likely that it is. So, insofar as explaining involves given reasons, arguments can be used as explanations. So we have three of the main uses of arguments: persuasion, justification, and explanation. Now, in general, what things should be taken into account when evaluating an argument? Well, at least these two questions. First, are the premises true? And second, do the premises support the conclusion? And we'll be concerned with this later in the course. Also, if you're asked, well, when is an argument successful? Well, the answer might depend on what the purpose is, right? If your purpose is to justify a particular position, then the criteria of success might be different with respect to whether your argument is intended as an explanation or as a vehicle of persuasion. So it depends on the goals. Finally, here are some questions for you to mull over. So, is it okay to give arguments for conclusions both you and your audience already accept? Is it okay to use premises that you do not accept? And is it okay to use premises that the audience does not accept? Is it okay to use premises that neither the audience nor you accept?